All right, so let's dive in. You sent over a really interesting mix of stuff happenings in AI, and man, things are moving fast.
Yeah, it's pretty wild right now.
We've got news from the big players, interesting discussions popping up in different communities, even a few surprise releases. It feels like everyone's pushing hard.
Definitely a lot of energy out there.
So, our goal today is to unpack this and figure out what's really going on with AI development right now without getting bogged down in every little detail, like getting the key takeaways. What are the things that'll make you go, oh, wow, that's a big deal?
Exactly. We want to give you that clear sense of where things are heading.
So, we'll look at new models, benchmarks, tools, and of course, what the devs are saying online. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
First up, it seems like a couple of major players are really focusing on improving the way their models think. Anthropic made a big splash with their Think tool, emphasizing its reasoning and ability to actually use other tools.
Right.
And then Claude Code jumped on board with their own version of a Think tool during their mini launch week. So it feels like there's a real push to get AIs to move beyond just generating text and more into actually solving problems. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's super interesting that they're actually calling these features think tools. That it signals a pretty clear intention to move beyond pattern recognition and actually move towards a more deliberate, step-by-step reasoning within the models.
Yeah.
And that kind of abstract reasoning is super important if you want to tackle complex problems in the real world. Problems where the answer isn't just sitting there in the training data.
It's like they're trying to give the models their own thought process.
Exactly.
Now, let's shift gears to the models themselves. There's been a ton of activity. Gemini launched multiple features, but they didn't specify what they were. So that always leaves you wondering, Qtimoshi added vision capabilities, which seems like a natural next step. And then we have NVIDIA's Llama 3.3 Nematron Super 49B V1 climbing the ranks on the El Marina leaderboard. It's currently sitting at number 14. And for anyone who's not familiar with El Marina, it's a platform where different language models basically go head-to-head in anonymous evaluations.
It's like a battle royale for language models.
Right. It gives us a really tangible way to see how these models stack up against each other. Plus, Sakana AI is taking a completely different approach. They're actually using Sudoku puzzles to try and boost AI reasoning, which I've got to say is a pretty unique idea. What stands out to you about all these different ways people are trying to improve AI intelligence?
It really shows you how complex this challenge is. Like adding vision to Qtimoshi transforms it into a multimodal AI, which means it can now understand and process images as well as text and speech. That opens up a lot more possibilities. But NVIDIA's strong performance on El Marina shows that raw power and capability are still really important.
Yeah.
And I think Sakana AI's use of Sudoku is particularly interesting. Think of Sudoku as a little logic puzzle. By training AI on these puzzles, they're basically trying to teach it logical deduction at a fundamental level. It's kind of like how humans learn problem-solving skills through games.
Makes sense. It's not just about feeding it more data.
Exactly.
So we're seeing some exciting developments on the model front. But how do we measure the progress, and how do we compare these different approaches? That's where benchmarks come in. Percy Liang relaunched the Helm benchmark with a new leaderboard, which is definitely worth paying attention to because it provides a way to objectively evaluate these models. Meta AI also released SuiteRL. It's a new reinforcement learning algorithm designed for tasks that play out over multiple steps, and they claim it's better at credit assignment, which in reinforcement learning means figuring out which actions in a long sequence actually led to the final outcome.
It's tricky business.
And they also dropped Collaborative Agent Bench, a new benchmark that specifically tests how well AI agents can work together. So basically, it seems like we're moving beyond simple text generation towards AI that can handle much more complex problems and maybe even work together to solve them. What are your thoughts on these new benchmarks?
Well, I think the relaunch of the Helm benchmark shows a real effort to create more comprehensive ways to assess all these different AI capabilities.
Right.
And Meta AI's work on SuiteRL and Collaborative Agent Bench speaks to the need for AI that can function in more complex real-world situations.
Makes sense.
Like, better credit assignment is crucial for those long multi-step tasks
Yeah.
where you might not see the consequences of an early action until way later.
Yeah.
And having a benchmark specifically for collaboration shows how much interest there is in AI systems that can work together. That's got huge implications for things like robotics or complex project management.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. So we're seeing a ton of innovation in both proprietary models and how we evaluate them. But it's also really interesting to look at what's happening in the open source community.
Absolutely.
They've been incredibly busy. Galabytes actually teamed up with Cursor to work on coding agents, which is a field with huge potential to make software development a lot smoother. Qtai Labs released Moshivis. It's a vision speech model that has really low latency, which could lead to some really natural interactions between humans and computers. And then NVIDIA unveiled GR0TN1. It's an open source AI model specifically designed for humanoid robots. Pretty ambitious stuff. And ByteDance put Infinite U, their photo recrafting tool that preserves identity, on Hugging Face.
Oh yeah, that one's been getting a lot of attention.
And then, in a somewhat surprising move, Roblox released an app on Hugging Face that uses Cube 3D to generate 3D models from text, which really opens up access to some powerful tools. So the question is, how do all these open source developments affect the overall speed and direction of AI innovation?
Oh, they're vital. Absolutely
Absolutely.
vital. Like Galabyte's joining Cursor shows a real focus on making AI a core part of software development, and that could make coding way more efficient.
It's like having an AI pair programmer.
Yeah, exactly. And Qtai's Moshivis demonstrates the progress being made in creating more natural and responsive multimodal interfaces, bridging that gap between how we communicate and how AI understands.
Right.
And then NVIDIA's GR0TN1 for humanoid robots is a bold step. It could really accelerate the development of embodied AI, which basically means bringing intelligent robots closer to reality.
Robots that can think and act for themselves.
Right, and releasing tools like Infinite U and Cube 3D on Hugging Face gives a lot more developers and enthusiasts access to those capabilities so they can experiment and build on these technologies. That kind of broad participation often leads to unexpected breakthroughs and speeds up innovation overall, because you have so many different perspectives and ideas coming together.
Yeah, the open source community is a real powerhouse. So it's not just about the models and the code. It's also about how AI is being applied and the tools that are being built around it. Claude now has real-time web search, which makes it a way more versatile research tool.
Yeah, I've been playing around with that. It's pretty slick.
And there's a theory going around called the Deep Research X AI Builder Thesis. It's by this guy, Swix, on Twitter. And it's basically about how prompt-to-app AI builders and deep research agents are starting to converge, which suggests that in the future, it'll be a lot easier to create complex AI applications. You could go from a research question to a working tool much faster.
That would be a game changer.
And Dare.ai is pushing the idea of using LLMs as judges for automatically evaluating LL outputs, which could speed up development and testing significantly. And LangChain released MCP adapters to connect Anthropic's tools with their JavaScript libraries, which is all about making different AI systems work together more smoothly. Llama Index announced the public beta of Llama Extract, which is designed to structure even super complex documents, so that could be really useful for information management. And Perplexity is working on an update to their deep research tool. So it seems like there's a whole ecosystem of tools and techniques growing up around these large language models. What jumps out at you in this evolution of AI tooling?
I think the real-time web search in Claude is a huge step forward. It addresses a big limitation of a lot of these language models because it lets them access current information and context. That's so important for research and problem solving.
Yeah, it keeps them from being stuck in the past.
And the whole Deep Research X AI builder thesis is a really compelling idea. It basically suggests that we'll be able to go from in-depth research to building applications based on that knowledge very quickly.
Yeah.
That could empower individuals and small teams to build some pretty sophisticated AI-powered solutions.
It would democratize access to really powerful tools.
Exactly. And the LLM as a judge idea from Dare.ai shows that we need better ways to evaluate these increasingly complex LLM outputs. And all the updates and releases from LangChain Llama